Just doing a little mixing in the studio today for an upcoming CD release for strings and orchestra, mostly geared towards film music applications. Right now I'm just trying to get the solo violin to play a little bit more nice with the orchestra. Here's how it sounds by itself. But it's a little bit harsh, so I'm going to add an EQ. Much more sweet sounding. The other thing I want to do is just control the dynamics just a little bit. Although it was played amazingly well, there's just a little bit of subtlety that I want to bring out. And so to do that, I'll use a trusty old Fairchild. Perfect. Now we'll put it back in the mix, and it should sit just perfectly. I'm going to add the rest of this section in. So what we got to do is tame the violin and the viola sections. These were sort of doubles. And they're mostly Pitts passes and arco passes. So in order to sort of feel good about everything, we're going to pipe them through to the same concert hall reverb that we have. Now, because there's so many of those passages there, there's probably about 16 tracks of violins and violas. Here's what they sound like by themselves now. Now, because they're basically doing a homophonic texture, I'm going to go ahead and put a stereo compressor on them and pipe them all to the same bus, so that way I can kind of tame them as one significant unit and then fold that back into the orchestral passages that I've made. All right, now let's listen to it. Good. All right, now we'll put those back in the orchestra. Here we go. Okay, here it is. I have my stereo file of the individual tracks, and I'm ready to kind of master this and get it ready for duplication. So in this case, I'm going to use 4 different plugins. I'm going to use the Waves J37 plugin, which is the emulation of the very first Studer tape machine. And I like using their oldest tape stock formula. It's much more round sounding on the bottom end. And then I set it for 15 inches per second. My bias is at normal, so I'm not over biasing the tape machine to make it sound brighter. And I model the tracks at 3. I also turn the noise level all the way down and the saturation all the way down. So I'm going to play it for a second, and we'll just get an idea of the levels that are going to be going into the tape. So here we go. Get to some of the larger sections. Okay, good. All right, so in this case, I've got my levels set up exactly the way I like them. Now I'm going to mess with sort of the general EQ of the whole entire stereo file. In this case, I use a linear phase EQ because we don't want to have any phase issues, which basically kind of smears the image. It doesn't sound as clean. now I'm going to start to rein in a little bit of the bass frequencies, the low side of it. I'm going to set it to around 60. So let's listen to what's going on in the spectral energy at around 62 cycles per second. So here we go. Now you may not be able to hear that on your stereo system unless you're wearing really good headphones, but it should sound like a lot of just rumbly noises, like thunder in the distance. So this is the part that can make a mix really cloudy, and these bass frequencies need to be tamed in. Now I could set it much higher just so you can hear as I work my way up the frequency spectrum, and we start getting more and more of the actual audible sections. I don't want to get into this area. I want to leave that alone. So I'm going to get back down into the 60 realm. There's not a tremendous amount, but there are some big bass hits there that are definitely going to get some compression. And when I look at using the L316 or any kind of mastering limiter, I generally want to look at, because it's an orchestral piece, we don't want to squash it like we would if it was a pop mix or an R&B mix or something like that. We want to have as much dynamic range as we can. And so what I usually do is I go to the loudest part, which happens to be the very end, and I look at how much gain reduction is happening right there. So let's look at all right, so I can hear the compression going on, and it's a little too much. That feels better to me. So that's where I'm going to set it, and then I'm going to forget it in this case, because I know that I want to really heighten the idea of dynamic contrast. It is an orchestral piece after all. So now we basically have the entire piece ready for bounce and for inclusion into the upcoming CD. So hopefully this was moderately interesting, and you get a little bit of an insight into how you go about trying to make good sounds with individual tracks, then get your stereo mix, and then kind of figure out what would go into a typical type of light mastering procedure. I could have gotten a lot more surgical and used lots of different types of plugins, but in this case, these are some that I like, and I've had great results using these 4 in particular, and I know how to use them well, so I feel confident with getting a good product out there. So there you go. Until next time.